Hey, welcome back. Today's topic is one of the most important ones I've covered on this channel, and I genuinely mean that. We're talking about teaching your teenager personal finance, not in a sit them down and lecture them for an hour kind of way, but in a real, practical, science-backed way that actually sticks. Here's why this matters so much to me. Most of us, myself included, grew up without anyone really sitting down and explaining how money works. Nobody taught us about compound interest when we were 16. Nobody walked us through how a credit score gets built or what it actually means to invest. We figured it out the hard way, usually after making some expensive mistakes in our 20s. And look, that's okay, we survived. But here's the thing. We don't have to pass that same financial cluelessness on to our kids. We have a window, right now, while they're still living under our roof, to give them something most adults wish they'd had, a real financial education. A 2022 survey by the FINRA Investor Education Foundation found that only 34% of Americans could correctly answer 4 or 5 basic financial literacy questions. Questions about interest, inflation, diversification, and bond pricing. That's a failing grade for most of the adult population. And those adults were once teenagers whose parents, through no fault of their own, just didn't have this conversation. So let's change that pattern. Let's talk about how to actually do this, step by step, in a way that doesn't make your teenager roll their eyes and tune you out completely. Chapter 1. Why teens are actually the perfect age to learn this. Before we get into the how, I want to spend a minute on the why, because understanding the science behind teen financial learning is going to make you a much more effective teacher. There's a misconception that teenagers are too impulsive, too distracted, or too disinterested to absorb financial concepts. And yes, teenage brains are still developing. The prefrontal cortex, which handles long-term planning and impulse control, doesn't fully mature until around age 25, but that's not a reason to wait. It's actually a reason to start now. Research published in the Journal of Consumer Affairs found that financial habits and attitudes formed during adolescence have a lasting influence on adult financial behavior, more so than financial education received in adulthood. In other words, what your teen learns about money now is likely to shape their financial life for decades. Think of it like learning a language. A child who starts learning a second language at 13 will become more fluent than someone who starts at 35, even if the adult tries harder. Financial literacy works similarly. The neural pathways being laid down during the teenage years are deep and durable. There's also a motivation factor that's unique to this age. Teenagers are starting to want things: phones, clothes, cars, social experiences, freedom. They're highly motivated by money in a very immediate, tangible way. That's actually a gift for you as the parent. You have something to work with. A study by the University of Cambridge found that money habits in children are largely formed by age 7, but the complexity of those habits, budgeting, saving for goals, understanding credit, deepens dramatically between the ages of 12 and 17. These are the years where real financial scaffolding can be built. So don't wait until they're 18 and heading off to college. That's like waiting until the foundation is already poured to decide what kind of house you want to build. The teenage years are your construction window. Chapter 2. Start with the right mindset, yours and theirs. Okay, before we talk tactics, we need to talk about 2 mindsets, yours as the parent and theirs as the teenager. A lot of parents avoid money conversations with their kids because they feel like they haven't gotten their own finances perfectly figured out. They feel like a hypocrite teaching their teenager to save when they've got $8,000 in credit card debt themselves. I want to push back on that. You don't need to have a perfect financial life to be your teenager's financial guide. In fact, your mistakes are some of your most valuable teaching material. There is enormous power in saying to your teenager, here's something I did wrong with money, here's what it cost me, and here's what I wish I'd done instead. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that parents who engage in open, honest conversations about family finances, including financial mistakes and setbacks, raise children with significantly higher financial self-efficacy than parents who either shield their kids from money talk or simply give orders without explanation. Financial self-efficacy, by the way, is just a fancy way of saying your teen's belief in their own ability to manage money effectively. And that belief, that I can handle this feeling, is one of the strongest predictors of actual financial success later in life. So be open, be honest, be human. Now, for your teen, one of the biggest barriers to financial learning in teens isn't intelligence, it's mindset. And specifically, it's what researchers call a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. A teenager with a scarcity mindset thinks money is hard to get, easy to lose, and there's never enough. A teenager with an abundance mindset thinks money is something I can earn, grow, and use as a tool to build the life I want. Guess which one is more likely to save, invest, and make thoughtful financial decisions? Psychologist Carol Dweck's foundational research on growth mindset, published in her widely cited 2006 work and subsequent studies, demonstrates that students who believe their abilities can be developed through effort consistently outperform those who believe their abilities are fixed. This applies directly to financial skills. Teens who are taught that financial competence is learnable engage more deeply and retain more than those who receive purely prescriptive instruction. So before you teach your teen a single thing about budgeting or investing, spend some time planting the idea that money is a learnable skill, not a talent you either have or don't have. Frame every financial lesson as this is something anyone can learn and you're learning it at exactly the right time. Chapter 3. The core lessons. What every teen actually needs to know. All right, let's get into the meat of it. What are the actual financial concepts your teenager needs to understand before they leave your home? I'm going to walk through 5 core areas in order of how I'd introduce them. Lesson 1. How money moves. Income, expenses, and the gap between them. The most fundamental financial concept isn't investing or credit scores. It's this. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the source of all financial progress. Everything, savings, investments, debt repayment, wealth, comes from that gap. Start by helping your teenager map their own money flow. If they have a part-time job or receive an allowance, sit down with them and trace every dollar. What came in this month? What went out? What's left? Don't make it a lecture. Make it a discovery. Ask them to figure it out themselves and then discuss what they found. A 2021 study in the Journal of Financial Literacy found that teens who actively track their own income and spending, even for as little as 4 weeks, show significantly improved spending awareness and are more likely to make intentional saving decisions compared to those who receive instruction alone. The act of tracking isn't about restriction, it's about awareness. Most teenagers have no idea where their money goes, and honestly, most adults don't either. When your teen sees that they spent $120 last month on food delivery and coffee, that's a revelation, not a punishment. And revelations create change in a way that lectures simply don't. Lesson 2. Budgeting. Give every dollar a job. Once your teen understands where their money goes, it's time to introduce budgeting. And I'd encourage you to start with one of the simplest frameworks out there, the 50-30-20 rule, or for teenagers with more modest incomes, an even simpler version. Save first, then spend. Here's the concept. Before any money gets spent on anything fun, a percentage, let's say 20%, goes directly into savings, not whatever's left at the end of the month, because there's never anything left at the end of the month. We're talking about savings as a non-negotiable first move, the same way rent or a phone bill gets paid first. Research by behavioral economist Shlomo Ben-Artzi and Nobel laureate Richard Thaler, most notably through their Save More Tomorrow program, demonstrated that automatic savings contributions, where money is set aside before it can be spent, dramatically outperform intention-based savings. The same principle applies to teens. Automating savings, even with small amounts, builds the habit more effectively than willpower alone. A simple exercise. Open a separate savings account with your teenager. Many banks offer teen accounts with no fees, and set up an automatic transfer of even $20 or $30 per paycheck. It's not about the amount, it's about building the muscle memory of paying yourself first. Lesson 3. Understanding credit. It's a tool, not a trap. This is the one that I think parents either skip entirely or approach with so much fear that they make credit sound like a monster hiding under the bed. And because of that, a lot of young adults get their first credit card with zero understanding of how it actually works and end up in debt within a year. Here's what your teen actually needs to understand about credit. 1. A credit score is a number between 300 and 850 that tells lenders how reliable you are at repaying money. The higher the score, the better your interest rates on everything from car loans to mortgages. 2. Credit scores are built through behavior over time. Paying bills on time, keeping balances low relative to your credit limit, and not applying for too much credit at once. 3. A credit card is not free money. It's a short-term loan that costs nothing if paid in full every month and costs a lot if you carry a balance. 4. Starting to build credit at 18 or 19 responsibly puts you miles ahead of someone who starts at 25. Time is a factor in credit history. According to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, nearly 45 million Americans are considered credit invisible, meaning they have no credit file at all. Many of these individuals are young adults who simply never learned how to start building credit. The economic consequences are significant: higher insurance premiums, difficulty renting apartments, and higher borrowing costs over a lifetime. Consider adding your teenager as an authorized user on one of your credit cards when they're around 16 or 17. They don't have to use it, just being listed can begin building their credit history. And more importantly, it opens the door to a real conversation about how credit cards work, what interest means, and why paying the balance in full every month is non-negotiable. Lesson 4. The magic of compound interest. Show them the numbers. I want you to do something with your teenager this week. Pull up a compound interest calculator. There are plenty of free ones online, and run this scenario together. If a 17-year-old invests $100 per month starting today and earns an average annual return of 8%, how much will they have at 65? The answer is roughly $640,000 from $100 a month. Now, run the same scenario starting at age 27 instead of 17. The answer drops to around $280,000. 10 years of delay. The difference is over $360,000. That's the power of time and compound interest laid out in raw numbers, and no teenager forgets it once they've seen it. Albert Einstein is famously, though perhaps apocryphally, credited with calling compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether or not he actually said it, the math is indisputable. Empirical research in financial education consistently shows that visual demonstrations of compound growth are among the most effective tools for motivating young people to begin saving early. Don't just tell your teen that starting early matters. Show them the numbers. Make it personal. Ask them, what would you do with $640,000? What does that represent to you? A home? Financial freedom? Retiring early? Connect the math to something they care about, and it stops being a financial concept and becomes a goal. Lesson 5. Introduction to investing. It's not as complicated as it sounds. The final core lesson is investing. And I know this feels like advanced territory, but I promise you, the basics are something a curious 15-year-old can absolutely grasp. Start with the concept of ownership. When you buy a stock, you own a tiny piece of a real company. If that company does well, your piece becomes more valuable. If you buy an index fund, which is basically a basket of many companies at once, you own tiny pieces of hundreds or thousands of companies. Your risk is spread. Your growth is tied to the overall economy over time. Then introduce the idea of a Roth IRA. If your teenager has earned income from a part-time job, babysitting, or lawn mowing, they can open a Roth IRA and contribute up to the amount they earned, up to $7,000 per year in 2024. The money goes in after taxes, grows completely tax-free, and can be withdrawn tax-free in retirement. Vanguard's research on the long-term impact of Roth IRAs opened in early adulthood consistently shows that contributions made between ages 15 and 22 represent some of the highest value dollars ever invested due to the extraordinary length of time for compound growth. A $1,000 contribution at age 16 has roughly 49 years to grow before a standard retirement age of 65. Some parents offer to match their teenagers' Roth IRA contributions, effectively mimicking what an employer 401k match does. If your teenager earns $2,000 from a summer job and you contribute an additional $500 to their Roth IRA as a reward for working hard, you've just given them a real-world lesson in employer matching, incentivized earning, and retirement investing all at once. That's a powerful afternoon's work. Chapter 4. How to actually have these conversations without the eye rolls. Okay, you might be thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but my teenager doesn't want to hear me talk about money. They barely want to talk to me at all. I hear you, and I've got a few research-backed strategies for making these conversations actually work. The worst time to teach your teenager about money is when you sit them down and say, "Today we're going to learn about personal finance." Their eyes glaze over before you finish the sentence. Instead, make financial lessons contextual, tied to real moments and real decisions. When you're grocery shopping and you choose the store brand over the name brand, explain why. When you're filing your taxes, let them sit with you and ask questions. When they want a $150 pair of sneakers, don't just say yes or no. Ask them how many hours of work at their job that represents and let them make the call. These micro moments teach more than any formal lesson ever could. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Economic Psychology found that experiential financial learning, where young people are involved in real financial decisions rather than hypothetical exercises, led to significantly higher retention of financial concepts and more positive attitudes towards money management than classroom instruction alone. If you want your teen to learn to swim, you have to put them in the water. The same applies to money. At some point, they need to be managing real dollars with real consequences, not play money, not an allowance with no strings attached. One approach that works well: give your teenager a monthly or quarterly budget that covers specific expenses they'd otherwise ask you for. Clothing, personal care products, entertainment, eating out with friends. Give them the money up front and let them manage it. If they blow it all in the first week, they go without for the rest of the month. If they're smart about it, they might even have some left over to save. It sounds harsh, but it's the opposite of cruel. It's preparation. The consequences of poor budgeting at 16 are minor inconveniences. The consequences of poor budgeting at 26, with rent and car payments and student loans, are far more serious. Research from the National Endowment for Financial Education found that teens who were given responsibility for managing a portion of household expenses, such as their own clothing or entertainment budgets, developed stronger financial self-discipline and were significantly less likely to carry credit card debt in their 20s. One of the most powerful things you can do requires no curriculum, no calculator, and no formal lesson. It's simply this: talk about money openly and regularly in your home. This doesn't mean disclosing your exact salary or stressing your kids out about finances. It means having normal, calm conversations about financial decisions. We're skipping vacation this year because we're saving for a new roof. I put an extra $200 into savings this month because I want to build up our emergency fund. We got a raise at work, and here's how we're thinking about using it. Researchers at the University of Arizona found that families who discuss financial topics openly produce young adults who are significantly more confident in their financial decision-making, regardless of the family's actual income level. The income didn't matter nearly as much as the openness of the conversation. Money should not be a taboo topic in your home. Every time you treat it as something secret, shameful, or too complicated for teenagers to understand, you reinforce the idea that finances are scary and unapproachable. They're not. They're a life skill, and one that absolutely can be learned. Chapter 5. The biggest mistakes parents make and how to avoid them. Let's talk about what not to do, because even well-intentioned parents can accidentally undermine their teenagers' financial education. Mistake 1. Rescuing them every time. This is the big one. Your teenager overspends their allowance and comes to you for more. You give it to them because it's easier, or because you feel bad watching them go without. And in that moment, you've just taught them that there are no real consequences to overspending, because mom or dad will always bail them out. Letting your teenager experience the natural consequences of a small financial mistake now is one of the kindest things you can do for them. Not punishment, natural consequences. They ran out of money before the end of the month. They can't go to the movies with their friends. That uncomfortable feeling, that's the lesson. And it's a lesson that will stay with them far longer than any conversation. Mistake 2. Only teaching restriction, not growth. A lot of financial advice aimed at young people is almost entirely about restriction. Don't spend. Cut back. Save more. And while that's all valid, it misses half the equation, which is growth. The most financially successful people aren't just good at cutting expenses. They're good at growing income and growing investments. Teach your teenager that there's a ceiling to how much you can save, but no ceiling to how much you can earn and invest. Encourage them to think about ways to make money, not just ways to spend less of it. A longitudinal study by the Rand Corporation, following young adults over 15 years, found that income growth and investment behavior were stronger predictors of long-term wealth accumulation than savings rate alone, particularly for those who started building wealth before age 25. Mistake 3. Waiting until they need to know. I'll talk to them about money when they get the first job. I'll explain investing when they're in college. There'll be time for this later. There won't be. The time is now, and every month you delay is a month of compound growth, habit formation, and financial confidence that doesn't get built. You don't wait until your child is 16 to teach them to read. Financial literacy deserves the same urgency. Start where they are, with concepts they can grasp right now, and build from there. Let me close with something concrete. Here's a simple action plan. 5 things you can do this week to start your teen's financial education. 1. Have one honest, pressure-free money conversation with your teenager this week. Not a lecture, just a conversation. Ask them what they know about money, what questions they have, what they want to be able to afford someday. 2. Open or review their savings account together. If they don't have one, set one up. If they do, look at the balance together and talk about what it could become with consistent contributions. 3. Do the compound interest calculator exercise. Sit down, pull it up, and let the numbers do the talking. Watch their face when they see what $100 a month at 17 becomes at 65. 4. Give them one real financial responsibility this month, whether that's managing their own closing budget, paying their own phone bill with money you've given them, or tracking every dollar they spend for 30 days. 5. If they have earned income, look into opening a Roth IRA for them. Even $500 in a Roth IRA at 16 is worth more than most financial gifts you'll ever give. The most valuable inheritance you can leave your teenager isn't money. It's the knowledge of what to do with money. That education, given at the right time and in the right way, is worth more than any trust fund. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this useful, please share it with a parent who needs it, because there are a lot of us who are figuring this out as we go, and we could all use the support. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.